Welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to continue expanding on our existing systems, fleshing out some of the game's more unique mechanics, and finally working on round 2 of our buff system. You'll notice my face in the corner as this was done on livestream, which was great fun. Talking through problems and explaining things really added some variety to working on this project. Starting off, I want to set up some UI elements that will help me with testing. The green button here will be a speed up button that when pressed will make the game run much quicker. While this sounds like it could be tricky, Unreal has a built-in function called time dilation. With this, we can simply tell Unreal that we want the game to run 5 times faster, and it will. In more complicated games, you may need to consider additional steps, but here it will work just fine. The second button will serve as a wave start button. We want to give our players some way to start a wave once they have finished setting up their defense. Before we can spawn a wave, however, we will need to define what a wave even is. In most tower defenses, a wave is designed by hand, and with wave 1 having maybe 10 enemies of a specific type. While this won't be the end goal, I will set up a wave manually to ensure I'm spawning it correctly. After I've set up my wave, I need to spawn it. This will be divided into a few functions. The first is a spawn minion function that should be called to spawn the specific minion that is specified. A second will be a spawn wave function that will take the list of minions provided to it and loop through it, calling the spawn minion function for each minion in its list. This function also creates a list of living enemies for the game mode to reference. We want the wave to end when no enemies are living, either from dying or from reaching the end. With a short delay built into the function, we will also space out the spawns so they don't appear right on top of each other. With this all implemented, I throw a few tests at it to make sure it spawns explicitly what we told it to spawn, when it should, and it passes. All enemies spawn, and the game mode knows when all enemies have died. Great! Now for the most complicated system yet. Like I said before, tower defenses have handcrafted waves, but I wanted something more procedural. I want to provide a list of enemies that can be spawned and let the computer handle that. To do this, I create a point structure. The computer can use these points to buy units, and each unit has a cost associated with it. First, we provide it with a list of units it can spawn at any given time. Next, we select a random number from 0 to the length of the list minus 1. This will give us a random unit from the list. We then see if we have enough points to buy this unit. If we do, great, add it to our wave. If we don't, try again. By having a minion in our list worth at least 1 point at any time, we can ensure that this will come to an end at some point. When the computer has spent all available points, we have created our wave. We can then send this list to our spawn wave function and it will take care of the rest. The system also has some great ways of scaling it in the future. For one, to increase difficulty, we can simply provide it with more points. If we want to spawn a specific unit on specific waves, we can have cases based on wave count to either add it to the table of possible units to spawn, or directly add it to the wave that will get passed along. This will give us handcrafted control that you may want, while allowing for playthroughs to be different. Here we can see our dynamically generated wave of minions running through their lane. We do have some cleanup to do though. We need to know when exactly to generate this wave. At game start is a great time, but we also need to do it after each wave ends. We also need to make sure to clear our purchased unit list and the wave to spawn list to ensure we don't spawn the previous wave. Luckily, we know the game mode can tell when the wave has ended, giving us a perfect place to do all this cleanup and get the game ready for the next wave. After messing around with spawning waves for a little, I realized we also need a way to scale minions over time. For example, a minion with 100 health at wave 1 is unlikely to be a threat come wave 10. Rather than making many different versions of the same unit, we can give the unit a health scaling value. This value can be multiplied by the wave count and added to the minion when spawned. This will allow any unit we spawn to remain relevant no matter how many waves we have the players go to. Since we're also talking about modifying stats, let's talk buffing our towers. In this game, we want to give players the ability to purchase upgrades for their towers such as 10% attack speed, 10% damage, or 10% range. We tried a version of this earlier that didn't quite work. In version 2, we were taking a different approach. When buffing a tower, we will spawn a sphere collider that contains the buff logic. When it spawns, it will overlap with the tower and give us a way to talk to that tower, letting it know we want to buff a value. Since it is an entity in the world, we can control the duration of the buff by simply controlling its lifetime. While absolutely inelegant, it seems to have the core functionality we need. When this buff collider touches our tower, we can call the adjust stat functionality. This passes through it the value we want to change and adjust on the tower. Currently, all our buffs are simple multipliers, meaning I don't need to care about any order of operation shenanigans from math class. A times B times C is the same as B times C times A, so I simply need to take the current attack speed, damage, or range, and multiply it by the buff amount. When it comes time to remove it, I can safely divide by that same amount to remove it. When I begin adding flat values, this will no longer work, but I'm not future me. Future me may not like me, but current me wants to get something working. The most obvious test case is range, since it is readily visible due to the debug lines, and it is the trickiest case. Attack speed and damage have their values directly affect their functionality. The range value, however, will not immediately cause the tower to shoot further. We have to update it, telling the sphere collider to actually grow to the size before it will function. I hooked buffing the tower to left click and set the buff to increase range for 2 seconds. After applying many of them and waiting for 2 seconds, we see that we have a super small circle. A node in our script was remembering its initial value, and after updating that, we can see it's working. Awesome. Well, I sure hope this will work in the future and definitely won't end up needing to be refactored for a third time. Right? Right? Again, this is for future me to decide. With all the major stuff I wanted to get working completed, I'm going to quickly implement our life counter as I sign off. Thank you everyone for watching. These have been fun to make and it's been interesting to journal my progress. If you like, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you Wednesday.